10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's have a good show.
Okay, would like to call to order the June 2nd, 2020 Cabarrus County Board of Commissioners Budget Workshop. Welcome everyone. It's only been a little less than 24 hours since we were together at our last meeting, so I appreciate everybody coming back. I think that everyone is with us, maybe with the exception of Commissioner Kiger. He was on the road and had indicated to me earlier that he would be cutting it close, so he should be joining us very shortly. So you all have hopefully received copies today of your budget workshop booklet with the agenda for tonight, which you also see on the screen. So at this point, I will turn the microphone over to County Manager Mike Downs, and he will take us from there. Or perhaps I will turn it over to Deputy County Manager Rodney.
I think he's muted.
Oh, sorry, I was unmuted. I was here. Sorry about that. Yeah, I was talking away. I can't believe you couldn't hear me. Yeah, just again, welcome everybody back to, this is our first work session here. If you have any immediate questions that you had from last night's discussion, we can address those now. If not, we can turn it over to Rodney, and he's gonna take it one step further than last night, and then we can answer all the questions after that as well, if you would like. Okay, with that, I guess we'll go on to Rodney.
So hearing none, I just want to confirm you can see the slide deck?
Yes, sir.
All right. So in terms of the agenda for tonight, we have about the first hour, and we're going to focus that on three separate topics. The first is just a recap of the FY21 recommended budget. We will have a discussion of some of the key personnel requests, and I have department directors that are going to speak to those. And then we'll just open it up for any questions that you all have about the recommended budget. And then that'll be followed by the school system. So Kannapolis City Schools will go first, followed by Cabarrus County Schools, and then Rowan Cabarrus Community College. And then we'll have a presentation from the Health Alliance before a break. And then we'll just close with any final discussions that you all want to have. We'll reconvene on Thursday, June 4th, and the topics there will be the EDC presentation, presentation from the CVB, and then we'll have a discussion about the fire districts. And again, we'll end there with a general discussion about the budget. Any questions on the agenda?
I guess, Rodney, real quick on the fire districts, you should have gotten in your packets all of their requests in writing and what they would use additional revenues for. So there will not be any presentations from them at this time. We were not planning on that. So if you would prefer, if there's one that stood out that you had some questions, we can have that department come in. If not, we will just have the discussion based on their brief descriptions of what they need the additional funds for.
And we can come back to that at the general discussion tonight to see if you have any specifics that you want to hear on Thursday.
Yep.
So just to recap for anybody that might be watching for the first time in regards to what the FY21 recommended budget looks like. And so this slide breaks down the revenues and expenses a couple of different ways. The first is just the general fund. And so that's county's general operating fund. And then also all funds, which includes things like the landfill, our arena and events center, and then also our medical health insurance fund. And so you can see a total budget on the general fund side of $276 million, which is about a 0.18% increase over the prior year. And again, that increase is smaller because we're moving our debt service out to another fund. And then the total budget is about $361 million, which is a little bit inflated. We talked last night about the $40 million contribution from the general fund to the community investment fund. And so that inflates our revenue a bit. But year over year, we're looking at roughly about an 8% increase in revenues. And that's reflective of the revaluation results, but also our sales tax decline. And I thought this graphic was helpful in terms of understanding sort of where our money goes. And so what you see here is basically 42% of our funding goes to education. And that includes our 2 school systems, our community college, and then the debt service that supports the projects that we fund for them. And so that represents about $130 million of our budget that is going to public education. And then the next largest category is in the area of public safety. And so we talked last night about the investments in this budget going towards public safety, and that included the 55 positions that are going to emergency medical services, as well as the sheriff's office to support the courthouse and also the community. So I wanted to start there in terms of personnel. So I believe we have Jimmy LENTZ on the line, and to have him briefly talk through the positions in this budget that are going to support the community from an EMS perspective.
Certainly, and thank you for this opportunity. I'll just take it in the order that it's listed on this slide, and the 4 master paramedics and 4 paramedics will be to staff additional ambulance. It will be EMS 101 that will be stationed at the new Concord Fire Station 10, that in the current budget year, we went into a lease agreement with them, and they are predicting that construction to be done the end of the year. So we would be looking at staffing that truck soon to be January 1st or soon thereafter. This is a great location geographically for us, being at the Popperton-Harris Road intersection, which is the most densely populated, as we know, area of the county and most rapidly growing area of the county. So this is a good spot for us to locate, and we're excited about putting a truck there to help maintain the perimeters of response times and other things that will benefit by having a truck in that area. That would equate for 8 of the positions, obviously. The 4 additional positions are for a relief supervisor, 1 per each shift. What we're basing this on is the National Incident Management System and National Fire Protection Association recommend a span of control from 3 to 7 units. And that's pretty general across public safety. In our case, it would be a supervisor per ambulance. We are, with 3 to 7 being a recommendation and 5 being the optimum. We are currently during the day functioning with 12 trucks under 1 supervisor, and at night functioning with 10 trucks under 1 supervisor. So that will help us get a supervisor out in the field more, in conversations and in the stations with the employees, whereas the duty supervisor, the captain that is on shift now, is tied up very often with staffing needs, with logistical needs, with coordinating vehicle maintenance and logistics of moving trucks around. And I'm not saying they don't get out in the field, but we feel like from a service-wide, with some of the concerns we've addressed over the last 12 months, that it'll be beneficial to get an administrative position more day-to-day out with the folks and responding to calls, visiting in stations, meeting the needs of the employees, and again, just on a per shift basis. The question that is sometimes asked is, well, nighttime dropping down to 10 trucks is in need because of the call load being somewhat different. Why do you need a second supervisor at night versus during the day when it's busy? And that is very true. I get where that question comes from. But during the day, 8 to 5, you've got me as the director, Justin as the assistant director, and Captain Clark as the specialty services coordinator here to kind of help if the supervisor gets in a bind. If they're tied up somewhere on the north end and a need comes up on the south end, typically one of us are able to step in and help out with that. At night, the supervisor, granted we're only a phone call away, but at night the supervisor is pretty much floating on an island by themselves until they would call us and get us in or something. So there is a need there for the additional administrator night and day. And this will be changing our administrative structure to a point in which it hadn't been changed in my career. We're functioning right now with a supervisor and 1 relief, which is the exact same it's been through my tenure here. So I think with our growth and the expenditure we've seen, this is a need that we feel like we can justify, and we certainly appreciate your support.
Thank you, Jimmy. Any questions for those specific positions? Hearing none, we'll move on to Sheriff Shaw.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'll start with talking about the courthouse and specifically the courthouse expansion. Back in October of 2019, knowing that we were moving towards a courthouse expansion, I made a request with the North Carolina Sheriff's Association for their staff to come in and do a staffing analysis for the courthouse expansion based on the current drawings, what facilities were going to be utilized in the new courthouse. And we took a look at that, and what the study came back with after they had met with courthouse staff, current security staffing that exists at that location. They came back with a recommendation for 28 additional deputies to be assigned to the new courthouse, and also the existing courthouse, which will continue to be used in a somewhat different capacity, but changing over time. As we looked at this included initially 24 deputies and 4 sergeants. We went back and looked at it ourselves. We were able to reduce that number down to 22 deputies and 3 sergeants. A number of factors came into play with the new courthouse. We're going to really have at the onset 3 functioning levels of court operation in the new courthouse, where currently we have 2 levels that are basically functioning constantly versus the 3rd floor that is not quite as often. So we're going to be opening additional courtroom in the new courthouse. We're also going to be moving towards a 2-lane screening process versus a single-lane screen process. This will cut down on the lines in the front of the courthouse, folks having to wait outside in inclement weather and move them through as we scan those individuals. We're also going to be manning 2 access points as opposed to 1 currently. The second will be a staff access point for the different staff members of the courthouse, the clerk's office, the DA's office, judges, so on and so forth, attorneys that may be coming in that entrance. At that location, there will also be a monitoring station for our cameras that will be throughout the courthouse as well. Along with the courtrooms, we're also moving towards a digital courtroom. One of the things that's come out of COVID-19 is increasingly, in conjunction with the court system, we're doing more and more by video. So the digital courtroom will play an important role, but nonetheless still requires by law a bailiff be in the courtroom when the court is in session. So this is going to help us tremendously. We also have, because of that, we are also running a video room inside the detention center so that we are having to move less inmates into court who might be only in court for a very brief time for an initial appearance, a plea, some type of motion before the court. We are now have the capability to do that by video. It cuts down on a number of issues of moving inmates back and forth and the time and personnel involved in that. So we're looking also at an intake process that really is a little unique. This has been brought on by the Raise the Age legislation, with our juveniles now being housed at separate facilities. They're going to be transporting those juveniles in for court. So there's a basement area that will have secured parking for some court personnel. We're also going to have transport vans coming into the basement of the courthouse that will need to be screened. We're also going to have the deliveries that have typically taken place on the surface road outside will now be conducted in the basement. And again, another security screening process to make sure we maintain a level of security in that basement area as well. So you can see it adds on quite an additional amount of space to cover, as well as courtrooms to cover and additional floors that we haven't had to cover in the past. But we do feel confident that with the 25 additional staffing, we're going to be able to do that and maintain that staffing level for several years to come until there's expansion of additional courtrooms that are planned for the fourth floor of the courthouse. So that's where we are in looking at those levels and feeling like on day one, we'll be able to be up and functioning in that courthouse and operating the courts very efficiently and moving people in and out and making it even more convenient for our citizens to come and go from the courthouse with a reduction in wait time to come in, especially those that maybe just be coming to the clerk's office and not necessarily there for a court date that they're waiting for their time in court. So I think all in all, the recommendation and study that was done was on mark. We looked at it and really felt like we could trim it down some more, and that's where we are right now. The 2 deputy positions with Harrisburg are part of a contractual agreement with Harrisburg. They're looking at expansion. Of course, they would be funding those 2 additional deputies, but it would be bringing those 2 positions on under the sheriff's office should they decide to go through that in their budget process. The next is 2 lieutenants for the jail or detention center. Currently, in the detention center, to give you a little background, we house during normal operations about 350 inmates daily. One of the other things that we do that a lot of people may not realize is we run over 20 different inmate programs, developmental programs for them, religious programs for them, just a number of different programs to help them in their transition out of custody and back into society and hopefully helping to make them successful. That includes 120 volunteers that come and go through our detention center. And a vast majority of those occur in the evening. Under the current model, we have 2 lieutenants that are over approximately 140 detention facility employees. They are staffed during the daytime and have considerable amount of administrative duties as well, keeping those things that keep the detention center moving. There's a lot of parts. There's visitation. There's a number of medical programs that have to be supervised. Just the logistical side, a lot of those administrative duties are saddled on those 2 lieutenants. What we're proposing is 2 additional lieutenants that would be assigned to the 2 night shift squads, so that we have an in-house management level supervisor there to make on the spot decisions as to what we currently work with is a callback system, which obviously creates delays. We've also utilized a patrol supervisor in the past, but with the dynamics that have changed in detention center operations over the past few years, we need on-site supervision. This can be anything from issues that may involve inmate programs, volunteers, classification as new inmates come into the jail, medical issues, much like now. We have a quarantine pod where we're placing inmates as they come into the jail for the first 14 days. They're separated from the general population. So there's a number of things and critical decisions that need to be made on site and at the time that they're occurring, not to mention the emergency situations that we have from time to time that involve behavioral aspects or emergency medical situations that decisions need to be made. So what we're proposing is placing those on the night shift so that they're there, they can facilitate making those decisions quickly, obviously overseeing the operations and making sure that state mandated requirements such as inmate checks, those types of things are being maintained, that it continues, allows us to continue to have a good inspection performance from the state jail inspector. So there's a number of benefits that would come from this. The next position that's referenced there is an AV technician. As I've been before you before about the proposal for moving forward with a body worn camera program for the sheriff's office. We do not currently have one. I feel that very strongly that we need to move in this direction. We've applied for a grant with your approval to move forward this fall with the deployment of body worn cameras. With that comes a management issue with the video that is captured, how it's managed, how it's stored, how it's retrieved and provided to the district attorney's office for cases that go to trial. So it's very important to not only manage that body camera or the body worn camera side, but we also currently have the in-car camera side. We will merge those two programs together where this individual will be primarily responsible for that video evidence as it relates to those two programs, as well as additional duties related to evidence control that we do each and every day. The final position there is a business manager position that will allow us to focus on certain administrative aspects that involve a lot of day-to-day operations, everything from employee operation to management of our policy and procedures to our internal affairs program that we continue to bolster, ensuring the compliance with professional standards, our compliance as far as certifications are concerned. I've implemented an off-duty management program because of the number of officers that work at locations, at off-duty locations. We want to be able to manage that and track that. That is just a few of the duties that will be assigned to that individual to manage on a day-to-day basis. Another one would be fleet management. There's a number of these things that we try to tackle piecemeal as we move through an average year, that to provide some consistency and some efficiency, we would want to move in that direction to have that individual on staff in order to work more closely with county government as it relates to human relations, budget, those types of things that are projects that we're trying to move forward or work in conjunction with. So that gives you an overview of those requests, and I certainly appreciate your consideration.
Thank you, Sheriff. Any questions for the Sheriff?
Just one question, Sheriff Shaw. Of course, you explained the positions that we were adding to the courthouse. What's the total number? I mean, I know we already have some of those in place. So what will that bring our totals to?
That would bring our total staffing at both the old and new courthouse to 41 people. Because the old courthouse will still be utilized. There will be security needs there, and there will be continuing improvements in that courthouse with long-range plans for the utilization of even some of those courtrooms in there. So that will provide the adequate staffing. That staffing also allows, as staffing models go and what we looked at, you try to project that you're going to have individuals off. You're going to have special needs. You're going to have obviously trials that come up that are of a have more of a security threat concern. And the fact that we're going to be running really 4 daily operational floors versus the 2 we currently run with 16. That's where you see those numbers increase, and as well as the increased capacity. When you're talking about a traffic court date, we can sometimes have as much as 1,200 people scheduled on a traffic court date. Daily in the courtrooms, we're seeing anywhere from 180 to 300 plus in some of the district courtrooms. The numbers are staggering when you look at the number of folks that come in and out of that courthouse on a daily basis. And we're only going to grow as our population increases and the number of folks coming to the courthouse to engage in a lot of different forms of business with the clerk's office, not just the courts themselves.
Thank you. That was very helpful, and I think for for the benefit of the public. I would say the majority of our citizens in Cabarrus County probably do not visit the courthouse. So I think it's kind of surprising to a lot of folks to hear those numbers that you just gave us. I don't think most of us realize that there are 1,200 people that come through the courthouse on a traffic court day, unless you happen to be downtown early in the morning and see the line out there. But that was very helpful. Thank you.
And if
I just
I
have
may-
one quick question.
Yes.
I can wait.
The thing I wanted to make clear is those are not the numbers we're dealing with right now during COVID-19. The capacity has been greatly diminished in making sure that you know our social distancing is being adhered to. We're really running at low numbers currently, but again, once we're back back into normal operation, those are typical numbers. But I don't want you know the folks in Cabarrus County to think that we're putting hundreds of people in the courthouse currently. We're really running at a diminished rate out of an abundance of concern. And our Superior Court Judge, Judge McGee, has worked hard to put in place safety protocols to make sure when folks do come to the courthouse that they're safe and that we're doing everything we can to prevent that spread.
Good point. Thank you. Commissioner Honeycutt,
Good.
you had something.
I'm good now.
I've
I'm
got,
good now. Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I've got a quick question, and unless I guess the staffing part for the new courthouse, I don't disagree with the numbers and the recommendations. That part all seems reasonable. I guess the part that I need some clarification on is we're currently talking about the 21 budget, and the courthouse doesn't open until January of 23. So unless my math is not correct, that's 3 budget cycles from now. It's not this one, it's not the next one, it's the one after that. And that still will have a 6-month lead up. You know, we're opening in January, the budget for that year will start July 1st. So that's the part I guess I'm a little confused about of why we're putting that much personnel currently on the payroll for the new courthouse that won't be in operation until January of 2023.
So I can talk to part of it, and then Sheriff Shaw can finish the rest. So we're having the positions, or recommending the positions be authorized, but the intent is not to fill any of those until later fiscal years. So I believe the current plan is that the sheriff would fill 7 of those positions in January of 2021. And he can speak to sort of the reason that he can't hire all of those at the same time. He needs some additional time to bring those folks on board. But the intent, to your point, is not to have all of those folks on the payroll until they are needed. And some of those will not be needed until FY23. So in the intervening time, those funds will be used for one-time capital projects.
So we'll take the funds that we're going to set aside. I guess we're going to earmark whatever would be being paid to an individual, and it kind of carve it out for capital.
Correct. So for I'll give you for FY21, the total courthouse budget for these new positions and operating is $4.2 million. Of that, about $3.8 million is being used for one-time capital projects. So only about $400,000 is being used for actual new courthouse expenditures. And that is again related to the 7 positions that the sheriff would hire in January.
Okay. And so those 7 positions would be, obviously, somewhere in the current courthouse, not the new courthouse, but then would just be part of the ramp up to be ready in January of 2023.
Yes, sir, that's correct. Part of the process is individuals that we will be hiring for these positions will most likely have to go to basic law enforcement training certification. That currently is a 17-week program. We're going to do our best to recruit individuals that have already completed that program, but in some cases, we will, it will not be hiring 7 individuals on January 1 or January 5th or whatever the case may be. We have to do, of course, the standard background process, hiring process. It allows us to have some lead time that we can begin to stagger employees coming on, start their training process, and not have to try in a 6-month period to hire 25 people at one time. With recruitment challenges that we work with every day, we knew we could not do that. Another constraining factor is that the community colleges only run 2 of those programs currently here in Cabarrus County, 2 of those programs a year. So we're really even constrained by the time frames of when they run those programs, when we can get individuals hired, get them into the program if we have to. If we don't have to get them into the program, we'll delay that hiring because they're already certified if we can do that and still retain them. So there's a number of variables there that we're working through and trying to come up with a process to make sure that we're meeting that objective come opening day of the courthouse. So that's the reason behind the plan of staggering that, with the understanding the goal is this number of positions at the end of the day.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I have a couple questions, if you don't mind. Thank you, Blake. That was the questions that I had too. Why were we bringing those on so early? So Rodney, not right now, but maybe Thursday would be helpful if you can point, or maybe you're planning to do it already, I don't know. But Thursday, could you point out where in the budget book you're identifying the $3.8 million that'll go for one-time capital projects? We just got the notebooks today. Mm-hmm. Have not had an opportunity personally to read through everything. So I will make it definitely a plan to have read through everything by Thursday, but it would be good to be able to show where that money's going, because that was confusing for me as well on the timing of those 2 categories. So then back to the sheriff, for the deputies for Harrisburg and the 2 lieutenants in the jail, the AV technician and the business manager, what is the timeline that you have proposed for those 6 positions, if you will? Are those going to be as soon after July 1 that you can, identify and hire, or are those also going to be staggered?
Currently, the grant process is putting us in a situation where probably that grant award will not be awarded until October 1, working off of the federal fiscal year. So that position would not be needed until later, several months after July 1. The 2 lieutenant positions in the jail would be, obviously, because they're new positions, there'll be promotions of sergeants to lieutenant positions. The trickle down effect, of course, would be then promotions to fill those 2 vacant sergeant positions, and then ultimately the filling of the 2 vacancies created in detention from the promotions to sergeants. So that's going to be very staggered. Obviously, priority wise, I want to get those supervisors on those night shifts. So that would kind of give you an indication of there would be a process that would leave some positions open for some periods of time as we move through those promotional processes. As far as the Harrisburg deputy positions, if Harrisburg approves their budget to include those 2, and we know that after July 1, we will begin the process of recruitment for meeting that request by them as soon as we possibly can. So that's dependent a little bit upon recruitment and availability of individuals to fill those positions as well. The business manager position would be something that I would be looking to fill sometime in the range of October, somewhere around September or October, if that helps or answers your question.
It does. Are you planning? To me, that would seem that the business manager for the skill set that you need would be somewhat unique of understanding the operations of law enforcement. Is that the case, or do you have somebody currently that's going to, like you will with the lieutenants, move up into that position and whatnot? Or if you haven't gotten that far thinking it through, that's fine. I'm just kind of curious what kind of requirements you're looking for somebody for that position.
Yes. To answer your question, it would be someone internal. I think inherently what we're looking at is that would be a captain's level position, due to some of those duties, administrative duties would require someone with significant experience, law enforcement management wise. We would have candidates internal to the sheriff's office for that position, for them to be able to run some of those things that we're doing. We're currently going through a complete review and enhancement of our policies and procedures for the sheriff's office. I think it's healthy to do that, to make sure they're current and they're consistent with not only law enforcement expectations, but the expectations of our community. We want to be able to manage that constantly and not let it be a living document. And we've taken some steps through software to enhance that as well. But as you can imagine, it's a tall order. We've been trying to jointly get this project done for over a year. We want to make sure it's maintained, that all our hard work doesn't go, as well as some other areas that we consider to be liability, professional standards. We've not had a person dedicated to professional standards. I think that's inherently important, that we're doing those things internally and externally to ensure that people know that we take any complaint seriously, that we thoroughly investigate any complaint, and that we're transparent in what we're doing. And I want to be able to report that out. So there's a number of things as we're going through and crafting it. But yes, I think that's the direction we're leaning. I have a rough draft of that job description. We're tweaking it a little bit, and that's why I'm saying, I would not want to rush, right out of the gate, July 1 or July 7th, to make that move, but to make sure we've put the proper thought into, the right things that fall under that individual to hopefully make operations run more smoothly, and that also provides an increased level of confidence in our agency and what we're doing.
Thank you. Your answers were great, and I agree with you completely. It sounds like the business manager position is one that is needed, and also the jail positions would be needed as soon as you can find the right people to promote. So thank you very much for all that information. I think the general public will enjoy hearing from you today on everything that's going on with your department. So thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question. This would probably be for Rodney. And it's in reference to the funding for the 2 deputies for Harrisburg. Now, is that contingent upon whether Harrisburg needs those 2? They've requested them, but are we going to hire these guys even if they don't approve it? And if so, we set aside, I think Rodney, you said last night that it was like $126,000 to outfit a deputy. That might have been for a school resource officer. I can't remember, but if that's the case, you're looking at over $200,000 to fund for these 2 positions. But won't the town of Harrisburg reimburse us for that if they do say they'll take the 2? How does that work as far as we got money set aside for what Sheriff Shaw's asking, but we're going to get that money back for the deputies if they approve it? So tell me how that works.
Yeah, so the way it's reflected in the budget is on the revenue side, we have an entry for these 2 positions. So that's a revenue coming from the town of Harrisburg to the county for the 2 positions based on average deputy salaries. The equipment is handled a little bit differently. And so in the past, Harrisburg would buy the equipment directly. And so they have in their recommended budget included the equipment for 2 additional deputies. We are working on amending the agreement and having a new contract with the town of Harrisburg that will have the county purchase the equipment, and then the town will reimburse us for that expense. And so to answer your question in a short manner, they would pay for all of the expenses related to these 2 deputies.
So it's pretty much a wash then, basically.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah.
Now, it doesn't cover, obviously, the administrative overhead currently of administering the contracts, things like HR, communications that go into managing those deputies, but it does cover the direct expenses.
And you're talking about the contract that I think Mike had mentioned that we've been trying to do.
Correct.
Because the contract that we have is so outdated. So, okay.
Yes,
I'm with you. All right.
We're close to the finish line, but we're not quite there yet.
Thank you, Rod.
All right. Thank you, Sheriff Shaw. So next up, if I can get it to move. There we go. All right, so next up is Emery, our library director, and she's going to talk about those 2 positions there. But also, Emery, if you wouldn't mind, since we started our curbside service yesterday, just updating the board on how that's going.
Absolutely. Hi, everybody. Curbside, the first day was insane in a very good way. We were busy. I think every branch had cars in the parking lot at about 8:45, and we didn't start until 9. So we were definitely excited, and I think the patrons were too, to finally see faces again and get books again. And so we've been busy. It did slow down a little today, and we expect it to be kind of pretty steady from here on out. But we're still hearing a lot of excitement and getting a lot of calls. So I'm sure we won't have no patrons anytime soon. As to the positions, so in trying to make this relatable, our staffing model currently reminded me of an issue I think we've probably all had, and that's with your remote control. And if your remote control to your TV dies and you don't have any batteries, you have to go pull a battery from something else and put it in your remote control so you can get it to work. But then your other item, like your toothbrush or something, isn't going to work as well. And that's kind of what our staffing model has been for the past few years. When everything is present and there, everything works really well. But as we all know, unforeseen things happen all the time. We've had this year alone, we have someone getting married and going on a honeymoon. We have someone having a baby, all these wonderful, happy things, but that means they're going to be gone for a while. So instead of consistently pulling people from other departments and other positions where it impacts the overall branch's ability to do their best work, the senior library assistant position is in essence our fresh new pack of batteries that we can put where we need to. And it is a senior library assistant position because that does give this person some supervisory capabilities. And just like with EMS and the Sheriff's Department, we are not a regular 8 to 5 department either. And we do have nights and weekends that we've often found some branches do not have a supervisor for, or, if that branch manager goes on vacation, it would be extremely helpful if we could have someone to cover. And as opposed to having a position like that at each branch, I think it would be fine if we had one that could float around and, that could also help us with outreach or help us with extra deliveries. We've definitely seen a large volume of books needing to transfer between branches right now with holds. So I think we pulled a couple thousand holds yesterday. And in cases like that, where we have that a high traffic or high volume of service, an extra hand would definitely be wonderful. As for the library assistant position in Midland, so this would enable us, I believe January is our target date for that. That would enable us to provide an extra day of service to the Midland community at the library, and also an extra hour in the evenings. So that is just simply to cover those hours. Right now, we just have the one full-time position and 2 part-time positions. So that would give us another position there to help out and be open more.
Thank you, Emery. Any questions for Emery?
So I guess I have one. For the library assistant in Midland, is that a part-time position or a full-time position that you would be adding? I presume the senior library assistant is a full-time position.
Yes, yes, these are both full-time positions.
All right.
For the, one more thing, since you talked about the curbside, can you briefly explain for people who will watch this how somebody is able to check out new books with you? How do they do that? Do they go online? Or I can understand taking books from people. That makes sense. But can you just kind of explain the process? Because somebody that might not have heard about that might be interested in coming by this week or next.
Absolutely. Yes. So it's fairly simple. You would just need to place holds on items that you'd like. And you can do that online through our catalog. If you know your library card number and PIN, you can just log in, place your holds. You can have up to 10 holds at one time. Or if you are not familiar with how to do that, you can always call us and we can do that for you. Either put the items on hold, walk you through the process. And once we have your holds available, you'll get a notification either by phone or email. And once you get that notification, you drive to whichever branch is your home branch, preferred branch, and just park in the designated parking area, pop your trunk, and a staff member will come out. You could just give us a call and let us know you're there, and the staff member will come out, place it in your trunk, and you can be on your way, no contact, and get all the good content.
Thank you very much. I think that's great that you're able to do that now.
We're very excited about it. It's been fun. It's been a lot of fun.
Yes, that's fantastic.
All right, thanks, Emery. So we're going to close with Karen, and she's going to walk through the human services positions that are included in the recommended budget.
Thank you, and good evening, commissioners. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right, so first off, for administration, the stepping up case managers. This particular, this is 2.5 positions that are transitioning to us that are currently provided by Daymark Recovery Services on contract through what's called Maintenance of Effort County funds in our mental health block grant. And so we have reduced those maintenance of effort funds going through Cardinal to Daymark in order to absorb the cost of these 2 positions transferring over to the Department of Human Services for us to manage the case managers. And so, so basically the Stepping Up program is a national initiative that was started sometime back with, and has been very successful in implementing in North Carolina, including here in Cabarrus County. And I think we've had it for a couple of years now. And so the program is designed to reduce the number of persons with mental illness and or substance use issues from re-entering the criminal justice system while increasing their accessibility to treatment services and participation in the community and transitioning them successfully back into the community. So we have 2 case managers that are housed at the jail that carry an active caseload. The caseload is down slightly right now. I think they have about 70 right now between the 2 of them. And the part-time position would be covering on the weekends when the case managers work through the week. The proposed plan is for them to transition in October to us, with the exception of the part-time position, which we're proposing to go ahead and hire for that one because we have one of the full-time case managers going out on leave. And so that is a little bit about that program and those positions transitioning over. And again, the funding is moving with that. So there shouldn't be an increase other than the part-time position in the budget for that. The next position is an interpreter for our administration division with the Department of Human Services. And foreign language interpreters are incredibly busy in our department, to say the least. We have 3 full-time positions and we have a need for a 4th due to the increased number of limited English proficiency clients that come into our agency for services, and in particular needing Spanish interpreting in order to apply for services. This is in compliance with the mandated requirements to follow Title VI of the Civil Rights Act in providing those services. And so we have to be able to provide those services to individuals presenting that need without any cost to them. And to give you an idea of the number of hold on just a second, let me find my notes here. We've got quite a bit of increased in 25% over the last year in the number of requests for not only calls, appointments, and in addition, these individuals, these 3 full-time interpreters, go out in the field with our Child Protective Services and our Adult Protective Services divisions whenever there's a need for interpreting services as well. We are using some of that virtually, which has helped reduce some of their time, but not only are they in the office with a number of walk-in clients coming in, but also receiving telephone calls, interpreting documents, in addition to going out into the field. And so this additional position would help us reduce the compensatory time hours of the 3 individuals that were working excessive hours. I think they have somewhere upwards of over 200 to 300 compensatory time hours above and beyond their regular work hours in order to try to keep up with the workload and the needs for those interpreting services. The next position we have is in our Adult and Aging Services division. This is for a Social Worker 3 in our guardianship program. Back in 2012, the Adult and Services Caseload Work Group recommended guardianship case management services at a 22 size caseload. We currently have 58 wards, and so our 2 case managers, our 2 social workers that carry those caseloads, one has got 30 cases right now and the other has 28 cases. So we're over capacity with that recommended caseload size by 14. And in addition to that, the state has a number of, I think there's 17 right now, cases that they're carrying on contract that they're going to be transitioning to us in the coming year. And so this position would absorb those additional 17 cases and the 14 cases, and it's still going to put us right at that 22 mark or a little bit more. The other part of this that's important to note to make this a little bit more personal is a lot of the wards that we're getting into care. I've done this about 27 years, and used to guardianship cases were your elderly population, 65 and older typically, but now we have wards that are aging directly out of foster care straight into the Adult and Aging Services division at 18, 19 years old. So you can imagine that we are having more intense services and more caseload management that is needed for the quality of services provision for those individuals, particularly those that have IDD and mental health disorders and other kinds of health issues that we need to address as far as being able to help them with their care. And so this additional position would enable us to be able to give those individuals that individual personalized case management services and really and truly better quality overall, because it's getting to where it's becoming unmanageable for the 2 case workers. In addition to that, 55% of them are not located in Cabarrus County. So they're having to travel to several places throughout the state to be able to get in the required visits to see these individuals as is mandated by the program and statute. The next position that we have on the list is a social work program manager, which is also in the adult and aging services world, with the caseloads continuing to climb, not only in guardianship cases, as I just spoke about, there's also a number of increased cases in our adult protective services as well, with the number of reports of abuse, neglect, or exploitation of our elderly population. And with that, we have after-hour staff that our regular daytime staff cover after hours. So if they've worked all day, there's a good chance they may have to go out in the evening if there's a case or a call that comes in. In many instances, our current social work supervisor is carrying that in addition to managing 3 full-time staff and the guardianship staff. And so we're wearing her out, just to put it quite frankly, and cannot continue to overload this individual with supervising the guardianship cases, the adult protective services after hours, in addition to trying to manage the staff and their performance. With all of that, it's quite a lot for her to juggle. This particular area does not have a program manager classification at all. All of our other divisions have that next layer in order to be able to help alleviate after hours needs, caseload demands, and supervision of staff. And so this particular position would supervise the social work supervisor that is over our APS and guardianship, in addition to 2 social work supervisor 2s that cover our state in-home caseloads as well. So this additional level of supervision would relieve some of that workload of the supervision of those adult protective service workers and guardianship workers, as well as developing better ways for our programs to work more efficiently and effectively. So that is kind of a summary of that particular request and the need for alleviating the additional workload there. As we're all aging and getting older, our increase in services and level of services in our adult and aging services population is continuing to grow as well. Karen. The next position, yes. I'm sorry. Did someone have a question?
Can you hear me?
I can.
I did. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
I was just curious, how does, on the guardianship, when you said that a lot of them have to go out of the county, how does that happen that they end up across the state?
A lot of times it's because of the level of placement and the level of care that they need. Sometimes it may be psychiatric care that they may need. We're talking like Central Hospital or Broughton Hospital. And so we have a number of wards that are located in those facilities. A lot of the other level of care is what we call a level 3 care, and it's similar to foster care in the ages 0 to 18 population. But this is a more of a group home care where it's kind of a lockdown facility 24/7. Medications are managed. And then we try to transition them to community living whenever that's appropriate. And so finding those placements here in Cabarrus County is very challenging.
Thank you.
Karen, when you have to send someone out of the county like that to Broughton or somewhere, I'm assuming that that's a county or a Medicaid or other provision that takes care of the funding for that.
Yes, that's correct. Typically, the treatment services are funded through Medicaid or some other funding source, such as our state in-home services funding and other funding sources. Sometimes the individual has their own funding, private funding sources as well. That's rare, though.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, the next position is in our Child Welfare Services division, which there's roughly about 85 staff in that particular division. We're asking for a social work supervisor in order to reduce the level of worker ratio over a gradual period of time in order to help stabilize the management of the child welfare program and reduce turnover. We have the recommended caseload size is 5 workers per supervisor, and we have anywhere from 5 to 6 within the 5 units that we have in our Child Protective Services division. And so we would like to reduce that to where and distribute those workers to an additional supervisor in order to stabilize and also provide better quality service provision. With the nature of the cases that we're seeing, quite frankly, are more severe allegations of abuse and neglect. and are taking a lot more intense case management, in addition to the changes in the guidelines with the Child Family Services Review, House Bill 630, which is now State Law 2017-41, which was Ryland's law, and that did the sweeping welfare reform, particularly in the child welfare programs. And we also have a modified policy manual that's being rolled out. And so trying to keep up with all of these different legislative changes in the Child Protective Services world. But at the same time, our priority is always the safety and well-being of our children and stabilizing families and trying to prevent removal if we can. And so this particular position would help us with the investigators and assessors that go out into the homes to investigate child abuse and neglect, and would help us with our staffing ratios for being able to not only manage the cases that are coming in, but be in compliance with the policies and guidelines and legislative requirements and mandates that we're under in order to protect children. And then the other position that is also in the Child Welfare Division is a Community Social Services Technician. This particular position is being asked for due primarily to the increased number of children that we've taken into custody in the past year. We normally average 95 children a year in foster care. We are at 150 and have been at that level for the last 8 months. And we do not see that reducing at this time. And what this community social services technician does is help transport our children to and from court-mandated, court-ordered visits with their family, to doctor's appointments and daycare and other particular appointments that child may have. And much like I described in the adult services world, we are traveling out of our county quite a lot, depending on where these children are placed. But to give you an example, a specific example, if we have a child in Charlotte that we have to go pick up at a particular foster home and transport for a visit that may take place with the parents being in Cabarrus County, we bring them back to our visitation rooms. That is a 3-hour window with just the hour visit when you look at your round trip, to give you an idea of how that particular individual would work and be on the road. We've had them have to travel as far all the way to different states from time to time to pick children up because their family resides in Cabarrus County. So this particular position would help us with the increased level of kids that we have in care. It will help reduce the foster care workers' time with transporting and doing these visits, because these individuals step in and do that for them so that the foster care worker can work with the family and with the child. And I'm almost to the end. The Economic Services Division, we have two divisions. We have Economic Family Support Services. This encompasses our Work First, Child Support, and our Crisis, Low-Income Energy, and Emergency Assistance programs. And this particular position, entitled a Program Specialist, is needed for primarily segregation of duties with the payments, the increased number of payments in this particular program has grown significantly with the low-income energy assistance payments and the crisis intervention payments. And what's been happening is we have some individuals in different program areas that don't even work in the energy programs stepping in to help us process those payments. And it's quite a bit fragmented and disjointed. And in order to streamline that and make it consistent, but also segregate the processing of those payments with the check writes and the request for payments to vendors, particularly Duke Energy, Progress Energy, and those various vendors that keep the power on for individuals and those kinds of things. This particular position will process those payments, and a different individual would be signing off on the authorization of those payments. And so this position is needed for compliance with segregation of duties for processing payments to our finance office. and upwards of I'm talking off the top of my head, but it's anywhere from 4,000 to 5,000 payments in a year. If it kind of gives you an idea, the low-income energy budget is over 600,000, as well as the crisis intervention budget is over 600,000, and then we have an additional bucket of money that we use as an MOE requirement for Work First, that is emergency assistance. That's a couple $100,000 as well. So very busy program for payables and accounts payables, and this would get us in compliance with being able to segregate those duties and be more efficient with processing those payments. And then finally, the income maintenance caseworker 2 position is for our adult Medicaid population. We currently have 10 workers in that program, by far one of the most challenging, complex programs in the Medicaid program. I often say, Diane's heard me say this before, she's on our advisory board, that you have to be a rocket scientist, an estate lawyer, and a tax attorney, and a medical doctor to be able to process the applications for the adult Medicaid population. They're extremely complex, can be very costly in chargebacks to the county if we don't get it right the first time when we process those applications and authorize payment to long-term care facilities in particular. And so this particular position would help us with the backlog of what we call ex parte cases in our Social Security program, where we have SSI recipients that are eligible for Medicaid. We get a report, and there's some 600 people on that report, and we have to process those cases within 90 days of the date we receive them. And so this particular position would help us better manage that report and that particular caseload, but it would also help us. Medicaid right now has 5 comprehensive audits that are done annually on that program. We are the oversight and scrutiny with this program, because it can be so costly, is quite intense. And so this would also help us have better quality in our processing of these applications, and also help us be compliant with all of these audits that we go through on an annual basis to ensure that we don't have those overages, those overpayments, and we don't miss anything. If there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. I went through that rather quickly. I greatly appreciate your consideration of these positions for the Department of Human Services.
Karen, this Mike, can you talk a little bit about the funding for that, the shared funding through the federal government as well as local money, and what those ratios are?
Yes, the majority of the positions, thankfully, we receive 50 to 52% of federal funding. With Medicaid, that particular position is funded 75%, 25% county share. The other positions that we have listed would get approximately 50 to 52% federal reimbursement, and so it's about a 48-52 match for the particular share for that. So any position that we have, if we are granted those positions, the reporting requirements, we do what's called day sheets, and we track their particular work in a program, and it's reimbursable through federal dollars.
Hey, Karen, this is Liz. I just want to tell you, I think your presentation is great. And not only explaining the positions that you need, but why you need them. And I think that's very important for the general public to understand how varied your services are and what the great needs are. You surprised me with 150 in foster care right now. I mean, I know that's a big area, but I didn't realize it was that large. And how that you do have to go across state lines or across the state to provide those services, and everything that you and all of your staff members do. So thank you for your presentation, and thank you to all of the people in human services. I'm sure there are many days that are very trying for a lot of your employees, and the things that they witness and the things that they work with to make the lives better for everybody that you are providing services for. So I just want to make sure that that you know, thank you, and please relay that to your department, that I think all of us in this call understand and appreciate the high level of service that you guys are providing, and what a difference that does make for residents of Cabarrus County. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Karen. So that concludes this first block, so I'll throw it back to the chairman.
Yes, sir. Now that I've learned how to unmute my microphone.
I just learned how to mute mine.
Exactly.
I wanted to just dovetail on what Commissioner Poole had said, and you know, sometimes I feel like it, you know, I can be a cheerleader, but this is one of those times where I think it's warranted. Prior to becoming a member of this board, I don't think I had any idea what Karen's department did. She wasn't here then, but in any of that, any aspect of that, and learning of what you do and your staff deals with on a daily basis, where, I mean, the people, real people and real families, where the rubber meets the road. I mean, I'm just in awe of what you guys get up and do every day, and could not be more appreciative of the way you go about your business and the way you take care of people in our county. So I just wanted to echo what Commissioner Poole had said. Thank you for the presentation. It was good information to get. The more we hear it, the better it is, and get a better understanding of what you do. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Kiger.
I just have one comment also for Karen. Karen, you said the 150 foster care children.
Yes.
Are they any kind of a waiting list for people that's waiting and just don't have the foster homes available?
We always have a need, and thank you for that question. That's a fantastic question, and I'm going to put in a shameless plug here, because we're always in need of what we call DSS family foster homes. And you can call our 920-1400 and ask to talk with a foster care licensing worker and learn about what it takes to be a foster parent in our community. We would love to keep our children local when it is possible to do so. We have about 40 DSS family foster homes. That's not enough, and we're always in need of more. And so we're looking for ways to recruit those families and have that quality of keeping the child here in the local schools, not disrupting them, least disruption as much as possible, and keep them local if we can. And then when we can't do that, we do have to look elsewhere for what's called therapeutic foster care. Can be a level 2 or a level 3, or in some instances, depending on the behaviors of the child and the treatment needs of the child, it can be psychiatric residential treatment facility, which is what we refer to as a PRTF. And so those are difficult and challenging for us to place. And they're oftentimes, in particular for the therapeutic foster care level, where we need some treatment for the child and some wraparound services. We need more homes like that in our community, but we also need our regular mom and dad or regular family unit. Single parents can also be foster parents as well. And so we always have that need. There is not a waiting list. If a child comes into custody, we have to find them a placement. But do we have a tremendous need for those placements in our county? Yes, we do.
Thank you, Karen.
Any other questions or comments for Karen? Well, it's kind of like I said about the courthouse earlier. I think that the average citizen in Cabarrus County does not understand all of the activities that go on in our human services area. And I think Karen did an excellent job of pointing out a lot of those situations. It's not only children that have very special needs that need assistance, but adults and aging folks as well. So thank you for an excellent job, and we certainly appreciate what you do. I think according to our agenda, next up is a presentation from Kannapolis City Schools. I scarcely recognize Todd Adams with his new facial hair, but welcome. We're happy to have you with us today. I think Superintendent Buckwell is also with us, as as well as Will. So we will turn the floor over to you. I will say up front that you're going to have to be very specific with your presentation. The writing on the printed material I cannot read, even with a magnifying glass. So we'll turn it over to you.
It's pretty small.
So if Karen has any more of those buckets of money down there that she was referring to, we would enjoy having them be shared. But good evening, folks. I'd like to thank you all for this opportunity. I hear all the time from other superintendents across North Carolina how difficult their jobs are with county government and the county commissioners. I am grateful to have the relationships we have and the high level of collaboration that results from those relationships. And I'll turn this presentation over to Will.
Hello, and just want to thank everyone for allowing us to do the presentation today. And I will try to be thorough, and I do apologize for the small print. I was trying to get a lot of information on a few pages, so we will move along with that. So, of course, this is our budget request for 2020-2021. We'll start off with CIP and capital outlay. Our CIP is very reminiscent, hasn't really changed to what we presented back in the winter and early spring. We have approximately $5.4 million proposed for 2021. 1.9 for 2022, 1.9 for 2023, 3.5 for 2024, and 450,000 for 2025. We do have that broken down between Cabarrus County and Rowan County, as you'll notice on the bottom, with Cabarrus County roughly 76%, Rowan County roughly 24%. These projects for us represent projects that are over $100,000 in cost. And as you can see, a lot of those are at A.L. Brown. We do have a few at our elementary schools, Forest Park, Jackson Park, Woodrow Wilson, McKnight, and Kannapolis Middle. I will point out a couple of things. The camera replacement at A.L. Brown right now is proposed to be funded by Rowan County. So we would be able to take that one off. The McKnight Head Start Pod, we're currently engaged with the federal government, and we're hoping to have a grant that would pay for that. So we would be able to take that one off, hopefully. And some of the HVAC are the ones that we're not able to accomplish with the energy savings project that we just did, but we were able to do a lot of that with energy savings. So we've had some success with a few of these about trying to find alternate sources of funding, but looking forward, this would be what our capital request would be for the next 5 years. Moving on to capital outlay, buildings and grounds less than 100,000.
Hey, Will?
Yes.
Would you rather have questions as we go or get through and go backwards?
Questions as we go is fine with me.
Okay, so on the just real buzz through the top on the A.L. Brown replacement items, what's the age on the tennis courts? And I don't have the screen in front of me now. There we go. The tennis courts, the HVAC equipment, the roof, the cameras. I mean, give a little quick run. I know I do remember you guys. There were some structural issues at the gym, and we did some structural analysis there. But the rest of those items, just give us a quick update on the age of those things.
Sure thing. The bullet gym tile replacement is because the bullet gym still has asbestos floor tile in the building from original construction, you know, back in the 50s, 60s time frame. So that's why that's on there. The camera replacements, the cameras are probably well over 10 to 15 years old, and they're the old analog cameras. They're not the digital IP cameras of today. So we're working on getting those replaced, as a lot of them don't work. Cannon Gym was I believe a 1930s construction, and it's basically being condemned. So we're going to have to replace that. The football stadium, ADA drainage, that also was a 50s, 60s type construction, and we need to bring that up to today's standards as far as ADA. And then the drainage there is also bad. The HVAC, A.L. Brown was originally built without air conditioning, and it was added much later. And I think in either the 80s or 90s one. Yeah. So that is aged out, and we need to look at some of the duct work and some of the piping to the internal piping into the building.
Well, that's fine. That's out in 23. Really, the roof, the tennis courts, the track, and the cameras is what I was mostly interested in.
Okay, the roof is a shingle roof that was last roofed in the early 90s, I believe, late 80s, early 90s. The tennis courts are fairly new. They are probably 10 years or less old. The problem is that we've replaced those once at the same site, and unfortunately, the site that they're on is not conducive to tennis courts. We are already seeing cracking and wide gaps in the pavement there. So what we would be doing there is proposing to put them on another site or another piece of land that would be suitable to the tennis courts.
Okay.
And then the track itself is fairly old, but it was surfaced with rubber in the 2000s. But the rubberized portion of it's peeling off, and it currently does not meet high school standards as far as a slope from top to bottom. So that's kind of the story on those.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Will, this is Lynn. I just have one quick question myself, and that is, are we seeing an improvement from at least last year, maybe even in prior years, with Rowan County stepping up with their portion of the budget?
Yes, I think we are. We're actually receiving $1 million from them, hopefully within the next couple of weeks. It's at the LGC now, and this will be able to do quite a few projects, a lot of flooring projects in our school, a lot of deferred maintenance issues that we have held out there, and we're going to be able to use that to fund a lot of those.
Yeah, well, that's good news there. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I'll move on to the capital outlay, less than 100,000. Now, there's multiple pages of these, so I will not go through all of them for you, but this is a lot of, your deferred maintenance. It's a lot of painting. It's a lot of flooring. It's a lot of, ceiling tile grid replacement. You have some bleachers in there, parking lot, seal and stripe, camera systems at other schools, sunshades on playgrounds, upgrade playgrounds. You have a little bit of security entrances there, some roof repairs, access controls, fencing, sidewalks, water heater replacement to tankless water heaters. That's just a sampling of what you'll find in there. All of that totals $4 million, a little over $4 million. Cabarrus's portion would be just a little over $3 million. So I'll stop now for that one and give you a chance to kind of look through that and see if you have any questions on that. Any questions? I'll keep moving. Next up is capital outlay. That's your traditional capital outlay. Technology, Chromebooks, iPads, laptops, furniture, TV monitors, things like that. I have to wait for the screen to change.
I started to say, I don't think your slides are advancing. We're still on the first page of less than 100,000.
Yeah. Yeah, they're moving. Yeah, if we can go, there we go. So this starts our traditional capital outlays. You'll see a digital marquee at L. Brown, Chromebooks, iPads, laptops, furniture, TV monitors, more iPads. We can go over again to the next page.
Will, are the iPads for students or teachers?
For students, what we're trying to do is become one-to-one at the elementary level. We are, fortunately not there right now. And with the COVID-19 this year, it became very apparent to us that we needed to try to step that up and, make sure that, God forbid something like this happened again, we would be ready and be one-to-one at the elementary level. So that's a little over 1.1 million, and that gives us a Cabarrus County portion of 880. So, any questions on capital outlay? Okay, we'll move to current expense. So on current expense, continuation local salaries. So this is our current local salary breakdown. So we have currently 5 admins, 5 assistant principals, 12 teachers, 29 custodians, 33 office staff, 7 teacher assistants, and 2 technology positions that are funded locally. You have your total salary, the retirement difference, and the insurance difference, and the total funds needed. So retirement's going up quite a bit. It's 20 point something. I can't remember exactly right off the top of my head this year. So up from, I think it was 18.68. So, and then there was also an increase in retirement. So we would need that to make up the continuing cost as far as current expense goes for those locally paid people. For Cabarrus, that equates to about $71,496. On to teacher supplement increase. This is a breakdown of many levels on teacher supplement. So we are currently at 6.5%, and this breaks down if we went up in 0.5% increments from 6.5 to 10. So if you go to the far right, funds needed. For example, if we went to 7% from 6.5, we would need 144,000. If we went to 7.5, 268 on down the line. So that is one thing that is a high priority for us. We would like to, eventually be able to get apples to apples with Cabarrus County schools at some point. They are well ahead of us right now, so we would like to take the steps to try to get to the same percentage as their funding. So, any questions on teacher supplements? Okay. Go to current expense expansion. And as always, we meet with the teachers and principals and leadership of the district to come up with these priorities, get these priorities together, present them to our Board of Education. Our Board of Education also looks at the priorities and determines this is what we would need to ask for the year. So our priorities were MTSS, which is a multi-tier system support interventionist. That's 2 positions. KMS core teachers. These are your traditional core teachers, your math, your science, your English language arts, teachers like that. A social worker, 1 position. STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math teacher, 1 position. And increased non-certified employee pay. So that comes to a total of 1,180,230, and that's with the Cabarrus portion of 896,974 that we would have to have for that. Any questions on current expense expansion? Well, that being said, that concludes my presentation. I have two pictures at the end of our children working in the STEM labs and HVAC, and I'm very proud of all the work we've done there. Thank you so much for your time and letting me present.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Steve, Steve, I'm sorry to interrupt. If I could, I would like just to add on and our thanks from the board to follow up on what Dr. Buckle said at the beginning. The relationship we have with you guys is tremendous. We certainly appreciate Lynn being the liaison and being with us each month at our board meetings. We really appreciate the relationship because we do hear those horror stories from other districts, and we're thankful not to be in that position. So thank you to everyone on the board. We appreciate it.
Thank you, and we appreciate those comments. That is a two-way street. So we appreciate what you guys do. Thank you for that presentation, Will. And I think next up we have Cabarrus County Schools presentation. We have Chairman Rob Walter with us, as well as Superintendent Chris Louder. So which one of you wants to lead off on that?
Let me start. Just like to say again, thank you for the invitation, the opportunity to participate virtually with you and your budget workshop this afternoon. I'm Rob Walter, the school board's chair for Cabarrus County Schools. I do have a few other board members that are participating or on our call here. We have Cindy Furtenbaugh, Carolyn Carpenter, and Laura Blackwell. But before we get started, I wanted to say that really, again, the board appreciates the support you all have shown consistently and the importance that you have given to the education systems here in Cabarrus County. We know it's a large part of your budget, and it continues to increase as our county continues to grow. But know that the support that you are making, that you've given to us through the locally paid positions, the teacher supplements, the numerous education opportunities for our students, enhancing security, maintaining our existing facilities, and constructing new schools over the last several years. Our students and staff are performing at levels unseen before in Cabarrus County, and that's great news and reason to celebrate. We know that the budget we're submitting here today and we'll go over today provides you a list of our overall needs. We understand the funding situation, the unprecedented times that we're facing, but we appreciate you and your staff working with needs, our priorities, so that most of our important items are able to get accomplished and funded every year. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to our superintendent, Chris Louder, and he'll go through the budget presentation and leave time for questions.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Walter, and thank you, County Commissioners. We appreciate it. Mr. Downs. And Kelly Klutz, our Chief Financial Officer, is also on the call. So if you guys have a real specific money question, she may have to jump in and help me with that as we get to questions. We do want to start, again, reiterating some of what was said here, just talk about how much we appreciate the relationship and your guys' participation with that. Mr. Downs has been a great partner since I've been the superintendent, always open, gives us any information that we need. Rodney has done a great job jumping in and, really trying to understand our budget, which is really the biggest thing that we can request and hope that is done. So again, we just want to say how much we appreciate all of that and looking at all of our needs and trying to do the best you can to help us meet those is all we can ask. And that has always happened. So thank you for that. We're going to do a high level budget presentation, and then we'll be glad to answer questions or talk about some specifics if you want to. So we start out usually with the next slide with just how we do our budget. We have a budget committee that has 29 members. 3 of those are school board members. 4 participate from the county. Ms. Honeycutt, I think, is the commissioner representative. Rodney was there and participating. Again, you have staff there that truly try to understand our budget. We have parents and business leaders. We have school leaders, principals, assistant principals, TAs, teachers, and then the leadership from our Ed Center. So we take all that and then use a Trigo analysis process to come up with our budget recommendations. Our big operating budget requests are the continuation requests, which is ultimately how we stay the same without going backwards. This is something, again, that you guys have committed to and been great partners with us over the last 5 years to make sure that we're not going backwards as far as funding when we're expanding our schools and services. So just matching salary increases, benefit increases, and operating expenses as we open new schools, like we're going to open the 2 that are coming up this year. Expansion requests are things that we're looking forward to obviously increase. You know, we've worked very closely with you guys to increase the teacher supplement and pretty much mental health positions. That's what CISP is. That's kind of the federal government's term for mental health positions. And then teacher allotments are part of expansion. Technology requests, about $1 million. Software, break fix staff. So again, as we increase schools, you need more people to be able to fix devices as we increase the students and grow 600 or 700 students a year. Technology budget, and then more devices as we add to that. Our building and grounds maintenance request is 1.7. That's general operations and repairs. That's techs, paint crews, stormwater technicians, all the thing that takes to maintain the school system. And then a charter school transfer request. As you guys know, we have a crazy funding system in North Carolina where the funding for charter schools goes through the school systems. So when they have an increase or when they grow, you have to kind of keep up with that. And again, you guys have done a great job to try to make sure that we continue that funding stream and don't get behind in trying to shuffle around students. Our capital outlay budget request, again, you guys have done an outstanding job of building into that and ongoing every year, have about $1,039,000 to fill those needs. Those are things, like we said, furniture, band instruments, buses, lifts, service trucks. So those needs don't go away, and figuring out how to have a recurring amount that we dip into year after year has truly put a dent in that, and something that we give the county a lot of credit for to make sure that we have a funding source and continue that need. So great system that you guys have put in place. Capital outlay budget request. This is from $25,000 to $500. This is the category that we've had a harder time finding a recurring pot of money for. But again, county manager, Mr. Marshall, Rodney, everybody's looking how to do that. But our 5-year requests are $123 million, 1 year 61, and then the top 36 on that list are about $7 million. The ones that I think we discussed throughout the budget process that are at the top of that list is the fire system at Concord High, the fire system at Northwest High, and then renovations to the existing mobile units at J.M. Robinson.
Dr. Louder.
Yes, sir.
Blake. How are you?
Good. How you doing?
So on the mobile renovation, is that work for ingress and egress, the decks and the hardscape, or is that the actual trailer that we're doing work to?
Yeah, so Chuck Taylor kind of does his magic, and a lot of times it's roof, it's replacing pieces, so it's kind of all of the above. But he can, pretty much show us, and we've, showed your staff ultimately that it's worth the investment, much cheaper to kind of renovate some of those. So when they work their magic on it, you'd be surprised how great they look inside. So he, tries to figure out the cheapest way to do it and continue that, and it's worked well for us.
Okay, great, thank you.
Capital improvement projects, again, these can be expensive. The identified needs we have is about $178 million. That's including mobiles for growth as we get new students, and then the class size mandate that makes us need more classes for the same amount of students. The funding for the middle school, which begins next month, replacing McAllister, again, security cameras, roofs, HVACs, and parking and driveway stuff that just never seems to go away, and look like Kannapolis had a lot of the same type of issues. And our Board of Education adopted that budget on April 20th. There's a link there, obviously, that people can look at. It's been out on the website to know what's been done, as we formally have passed that to request of you guys. And then we just have the 10-year planning update. As you guys are aware, we start that middle school really next month. Plan to open that in August of 2022. The next is downtown elementary, which is pretty much the McAllister replacement for August of 24. and then the Northwest High School replacement for August of 26 are kind of the first three on that list, and something that, again, we're all trying to work on plotting out, and Rodney and Susan trying to figure out how you guys may be able to afford that within the tax system. And again, that's just a high level overview, you know, kind of have there the partnership that exists. And again, we couldn't ask for more of a general truly trying to understand what the needs are and how to do it. There probably won't ever be enough money. I know we've said that before, but we couldn't ask the staff or the commissioners to do any more to say, yeah, we understand, now let's try to figure that out and prioritize it. And so we really do appreciate that. As Kanapla said earlier, that is not what everybody else has, but it certainly has been my experience all along and something that we're grateful for. So thank you for that. And if you have specific questions that any of us can answer, we'll certainly be glad to try to do that.
Questions for Superintendent Louder?
Yes, I do, Mr. Chairman. I forgot to unmute me. But anyway, Dr. Louder, where has the Central Cabarrus Replacement High School fell on your capital improvement plans?
Yeah, I don't have it on me exactly what the year is. It's on there, but right now it's significantly farther back. So I want to say it's 8 to 10 years down the road as far as a replacement. Lots of things changed. Really interesting, Mr. Hsu. I think, you know, when I first started, we kind of had Central Cabarrus at the top of the replacement list.
That's
and
right. And
there was tremendous growth there. Within a very short amount of time, 18 months or so, the growth there slowed down considerably in pockets, and the Northwest and the Cox Mill area just completely took off. So, and after that first year, we really had to say, if we're prioritizing these, we have to put Northwest ahead of that, just because the growth in that side of the county is tremendous. And so as we did that, as well as you guys know, building a high school is you know, probably our most expensive thing. So we have to try to fit that in and figure out how to go. So right now it's about 10 years out. It might be a little bit more. I don't have it in front of me, but it's a long way. And one of the things that we're worried about, and I know some people in that community get worried about, because, you know, essentially Central and Northwest were built the same year. Right. So figuring that out, and you know, how to maintain those structures, and also keep up with growth, and where the growth in the county is going to be and will be is always, you know, chasing your tail a little bit. But that's all part of our plan. And, you know, to be honest, if it's 10 years out, we're going to have to revise that numerous times before we know exactly where it really pops up anyway, if that makes sense.
Okay, yeah, that's good. And also, one more thing, as far as the growth is concerned, and when you got your redistricting done, pretty much all of that's done, I think. And when West Cabarrus High School opens in August, if we can manage to get that far, are your projections going to come out where that we're going to have reduced capacity in these other high schools to the point where the West Cabarrus is going to be totally filled up the day it opens? Or how are we looking on that?
Yeah, it won't open with the senior class. So the day that it opens, it won't be completely full, because we never, you know, begin with seniors. Seniors can always stay at their home school. So it'll only have 9, 10, and 11. But when we have the first senior class, you know, pre-COVID, so who knows exactly what those numbers are going to look like now. But when we have the first senior class, the capacity is about 1,850. And right now we're in the 1,750 to 800 range. So it is going to pretty much be full. But that was, you know, strategically what I think we explained to you guys from the beginning is what we want to do is pull people in, and there's not tremendous growth around that per se. So that leaves some other space in other areas. So, but yes, sir, when it opens with seniors, you know, again, pre-COVID, then it's going to be pretty full from day one.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Louder.
Yes, sir.
I've got a quick question. Actually may not be so quick. There's nothing like asking a question that doesn't really have an answer, but you can do the best you can. Concerning COVID, are you currently getting any direction from DPI on what the future may or may not look like as far as classroom space. I saw, and I shared it with Chairman Morris, a document from the CDC that said they may insist on buses using one person per seat and using every other row. And I mean, my math's not great, but that sounds like about 25% capacity on a bus. That would be massively expensive for us on our end to try to fund. But even beyond, I mean, we can speculate a lot of that, but even classroom size, lunchroom size, all of that's going to be directly impacted to us and our budget and planning over the next, 6, 7, 10 years, really, if that's what the direction is going to be. But has there been any conversations along those lines?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and there's been lots of conversation, not a lot of decisions, but a lot of conversation. So lots of kind of mini work groups among superintendents of, reentry plans and how that will work. Lots of working with the governor's office and the Department of Health and Human Services. A lot of the things that you just mentioned are things that have been on the table. We do not have here's what it's going to look like. I do have a couple of superintendent friends in Virginia who actually used to work for us and now they work in Virginia. They sent me all of it today, some pretty specific guidelines for the Virginia plan and what that's going to look like. At least I don't know if it's final yet, but it's the first, document that I've seen other than the CDC document that you're referring to. And a lot of those have, different variations, like you said, that students would come to school every 3 days, in third shifts. And so you would have a third of the kids in each classroom. One of our work groups worked with reentry and got on the bus and measured, if you keep 6 feet apart, then buses can hold about 72 students. You can put about 14 students on a bus if they really are 6 feet apart. So what guidelines or mandates that come down, whether teachers wear a mask every day, students wear a mask every day, will that be different for a 5-year-old than it will be for a 16-year-old? Those are all things that are kind of on the table. And we do not have specific plans or guidance, but lots of things to come down to say, what's the recommendation going to be? So, we have Wolf Meadow is a year-round school that'll begin somewhere around July 22nd. So fairly quickly, you're going to have to decide exactly what that looks like. And right now we don't, are not being told, is that going to be a statewide decision? Will it be a district decision? Athletics is coming on to say, are you going to let people work out? Is that going to be a statewide decision? Is it going to be? So that's a long-winded answer. For right now, we don't have specific guidelines, but a lot of discussion about what and how you would do the scenarios that you've mentioned.
Okay, well, there is a lot. I'm sure there is a lot of discussion amongst many groups. And am I correct? The calendar that you guys adopted, you'll start 2 weeks earlier coming than you did last year. Is that correct?
Yes.
Well, the legislature mandated that calendar again. So everybody in the state of North Carolina is supposed to begin on August 17th. That's really about a week earlier. But if the Republican National Convention goes on in Charlotte, then we're going to go down and not have school that week at the recommendation of Sheriff Shaw, because a lot of the activity that's going to be there. So that's our next thing that we're waiting on. Will that go on? If it doesn't go on, then we'll be in school that week. If it doesn't, then we'll start school for a week and then be out for a week while the convention goes.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, any other questions for Superintendent Louder or Cabarrus County School representatives? Well, we thank you very much for that presentation. I think one of the things that certainly the question about Central Cabarrus is a good example, as well as some of the other things that you talked about, is it is an ever-changing environment. And I think it's important for the public to understand that we are constantly looking at those with your guidance and as to how those situations evolve and change. Our growth patterns in the county continue to change. There are a lot of factors that I think people don't really think about that impact the things that you have to do. So we appreciate the relationship and the communication going forward. So it takes all of us working together to figure out some of those things. So if that concludes your report, then we are happy to have Roanne Cabarrus Community College with us for their presentation coming up. And I see President Spalding, so welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Good to see everyone. I want to add my gratitude to being in your county. Cabarrus County is a great place to have a college. You're going to see some great results of the growth that we've experienced this last year. And I think a pretty favorable budget coming forward as well. So we're very happy to be here. I think you all are in charge of putting up the slides. Am I right? Or are we running that?
I think they're magically appearing now.
Ta-da. Okay, so there it is. I love this kind of magic, especially when it works. So thank you. So I'm not going to be able to see you, but I'm looking at the presentation now, and we'll move to the next page, please. So this just, it's always great to tell people about our mission about improving lives and building community through public higher education and workforce development, because that is really the keys to what we've been doing and what we anticipate seeing as the economy goes sort of south. We think that our workforce development mission will be called on more than ever. Our vision, of course, is building sustainable futures through the power of learning. And I think we've really seen how some jobs are not sustainable, how some businesses are going to go under through this crisis that we have with COVID-19. And so working with people who have been displaced and giving them job skills that we think will be more sustainable is a lot of what we're anticipating doing in the year and years ahead. We'll go ahead and turn the page, please. Thank you. Our strategic plan themes, I just want to highlight a couple of things, is the sustainability idea again, and increasing the community's educational attainment, which is a statewide effort, and we're working very hard to increase the educational attainment and the desire for that attainment in our community. So we have really paid a lot of attention to increasing that, which is part of our learn. And so these are questions. How do we best prepare students to be responsible and productive citizens, especially now? And then how do we innovate? How do we create and serve the community of the future? And what we're seeing now is that we have sped up our online education service 10 years. I think what would have taken us 10 years to get to, we got to in a week, because we had to go from a good proportion, most of our students being in face-to-face classes, to almost all of them being online in a matter of a very short period of time. So that we had the capacity to do that, the skills to do that, but we didn't have the need to do it because a lot of people prefer face-to-face, a lot of faculty prefer face-to-face, but we were able to pivot and go into this community of the future now. And so we're anticipating, actually we're going through the summer term right now, where we are operating entirely online for our lecture courses, and we're working out the hours that students need for the hands-on courses like welding and cosmetology, CNC machining, and automotive. Those are the harder ones to deal with because you can't do those over the internet. And so what we're really looking at is being a catalyst for change. Sometimes you choose to do that, which is what we've done. We really want to be a catalyst for change, but we're also finding that we're going to be forced into more change than we anticipated with the extraordinary circumstances that we're going through right now. So it was interesting to hear Chris Lauder's comments about that, and from his point of view, which is a lot of questions and not very many answers. We are in that same boat, but we have some capacity to solve the problem of providing education through online very competently. So I'm ready for the next one. This slide you may have seen before, but I wanted just to remind you about how we see the community colleges around the state, and certainly Rowan Cabarrus, as a solid investment, because our students will go out and make more money than if they just graduated from high school. And so we know that these jobs are the future, and the jobs that are currently in question need higher education, need more skills so that they become more sustainable. And so we're looking at this $335 million of added income to the local economy annually as being a huge benefit to the community and certainly every student and their family. Okay, next slide, please. All right, so our enrollment growth last year was up over 7%, and that was very high. If you look at it nationally, we were one of the leaders in enrollment. And so, in fact, we were the fastest growing community college in the state in 2018, 2019. This is because of primarily Cabarrus County's growth too. And so it's reflected in our enrollment, where we're serving 22,000 students a year in both counties. But we're primarily moving toward Cabarrus County in terms of our numbers. So if you go to the next slide, you're going to see that chart, which has changed every time I think we've gotten together, where Cabarrus County continues to be in the 49% level, and the other two sectors are decreasing as a proportion. So Cabarrus County is really growing and really using the services of the community college. So sometimes you can't see it. We're not asking for additional space at this time. We're really happy with how things have gone with the Advanced Technology Center, and we'll get to that in a minute. But notice that we are growing. In fact, we're growing more than the county. So if you go to the next slide, you'll see on the left that we have a 13% student growth over 4 years from 2015 to 2019, 4 years. And then if we compare that to the Cabarrus County population growth of 10%, you can see that it's larger. And so we're very excited that people in Cabarrus County are pursuing higher education, because that will be great for them and great for our region as they're able to bring in salaries that are commensurate with their education. So we'll go to the next slide, please. Okay, so the COVID updates, you've heard a little bit about, but I'll give you some of our take on it too, because this has been a major impact. It's sort of taking us over in a sense, because we've had to radically change how we provide our education. But our students are still coming. So we had a 2% increase for summer enrollment. It's increased the need for our small business center services, and we've gotten additional funding for that from the federal government. We've increased our R3 center services for displaced workers as these jobs and these companies have gone out of business. So this service, which started in 2003 for the Pilitex layoffs, continues. We've supported it all these years because there's always a business going in and out of business. And so this one now, we are prepared to help as many people as we can as displaced workers. All of these services are being provided online. The transition to fully online coursework for as many courses as possible. I've already said we have done that, and we've done this well. We have been one of the most wired, the 4th most wired large community college recognized in the country. And so this has prepared us to be able to transition to fully online where we are right now. So we're also continuing to provide critical public safety training courses to meet our community's needs. And what that means is we currently have a large class of rookie school for the police that is taking place at South Campus. It's the only face-to-face course that we have there. And that is because we have a big need for public safety. We have a big need for the fire training. We have a big need for health-related programs and all these other things that require face-to-face. And so we are working with that. We're doing that social distancing, but because we have plenty of space at the moment, because everything else has been turned online. So that is how we are continuing to meet our mission. The public safety people have been very anxious to get back into training. They were in the middle of their course. They wanted to finish, and so we're making that happen. We've had our nurses finish this year. They had their pinning as a virtual pinning online, and they were able to go into the workforce even before they were taking their final testing because there's such a big need for those those workers going forward. So we continue to meet those needs and be flexible. We've seen more flexibility out of the federal government in regards to higher education than I've ever seen, and more quickly. And so one of the things that has happened as a result of COVID-19 is all the universities and community colleges have been given funding for the impact of online. And if you were a college that had no online education before, this is to try and help make that more possible. For us, it does the same thing, but we didn't have as far to go. And so the college was able to get $2.8 million from the federal government through the CARES Act. And that has been $1.1 million of that has gone out directly to students affected. And then we have an additional $300,000 for emergency needs. And then the second half is for institutional need. And we're looking at that as we go through. What are we going to do about COVID testing? And what are we going to do about having to hire additional faculty to take these larger classes and split them into two and have 2 teachers? So that is where a lot of this money is going to go. And so we are very much going to need this money and be happy to have it, especially when the state anticipates a budget shortfall for everything, including certainly community colleges and universities. So that gives you sort of a framework of what we're dealing with in COVID-19 updates so far. We're in connection with both counties, public health, HHS, but the fact that we've got students who are primarily learning from home remotely, we're not dealing with those face-to-face issues quite yet. We have not changed our calendar. We don't anticipate changing our calendar because it will be an online calendar for the most part. Okay, we'll go on to the next piece. So these are our requests and that you've seen, and you've seen the staff report on that, and we're very heartened by that. We appreciate it very much that the current operating budget request is just about met in this report that you currently have, and that our capital budget request, you picked our top 4 to fund, and we're very excited about that because we absolutely have those as our top priority. So though we're not getting the entire $10,781,000, we know that some of those things need to be done in the future, and that's certainly acceptable to us. So we appreciate the work that's been done so far and the recommendation from staff. Your staff, you've heard it over and over and over, but Mike Downs and now Rodney and other people have just been really, really excellent to work with, and they understand our needs, and we feel listened to and consulted. So we're just very pleased to work with them as well as with you. Let's go on to the next slide, please. In this case, we're looking at the current operating expansion request, and this is because of the additional square footage of the Advanced Technology Center and the energy and commodity inflation, and that was mostly met in our budget request through the staff. And if you go to the next slide, I'll talk a little bit about the Advanced Technology Center. As you know, it was in phase 1 and phase 2. Actually, it's probably been more phases than that because it started off as a $9 million bond issue, which was followed up by a county commission that met the needs for this building. We continued to go, and we had already started looking for grants when the Advanced Technology Center was funded at $9 million, and so we continued that search. So the Economic Development Administration, though it has been slow and painful, is looking like it is going to turn out well for all of us. And so the bids have come in. They've come in just about on schedule and just about on budget. They're a little bit up, but there's something we can deal with. And so we're very happy that that's about ready to happen. We think that the Advanced Technology Center Phase 2, which is the final parts of this, will be open in December of 2020. And so these reasonable bids will still need tweaking. We're not quite ready to come back to the staff, but we look forward to coming back to the staff and being able to ask for the match for EDA and seeking approvals to release the contingency and remaining funds for this and closing out this project. So that is very heartening to us. It gives us additional capacity, and with COVID, it slowed down the whole world. So the plastics program that we were anticipating going in there, has been slowed down too. So it's surprising that we're finally getting this to work, and it's all going to come together in December of 2020. So we're pleased about that. We have additional slides for individual projects, but I don't know that we need to go through those. We would be happy to answer any questions that you have, or take any suggestions that you have.
Okay, questions or comments for Dr. Spalding and the community college?
It's me, sorry. Carol, on the Technology Center,
yes.
What training is going on there specifically now, and about how many students are coming in and out of there?
Okay. Right now, they're all taking their courses online, so there's not anybody going in and out of there. But this is the home of the new transferable engineering degree. And so that is the primary focus of that. It's also got a very large contingent of continuing education, which are individual business training and short-term training, all of those things that have actually been on hold for the last 2 months. So I'd say the capacity of the HEC has been affected big time by the COVID-19 virus. And we expect that we'll get some of that, those students coming back in the very near future. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just saying, from touring that seems like such a hands-on
yes.
Experience.
Yes.
And I just wondered how that was working.
The hands-on is delayed. We have, we worked out the, so if you go to the other building, NCRC, with the nursing program, we have a very high-end simulation lab, and the high-end simulation lab let our faculty and nursing students finish their clinicals in a virtual, hands-on there, with just a scheduling difference, so that the faculty were able to work that out so they could finish. The engineering they can do online. Those robotics and things like that, you really do want to touch those machines. And so in the fall, we're going to start off virtually, and then we're going to put all the lab work at the end of the term. And then we'll either space that out with individual attention, or by then we will be in a different phase of the COVID virus, and we might not have to do as much social distancing. But in any case, that's how we will begin. That'll be true for welding. I don't know that I think one of the more affected groups is going to be the A.L. Brown welding program, which has been a highlight. Doing that with social distancing and all of it, we have not worked that through completely. The other one I bring up, you didn't ask me, but cosmetology is probably the biggest issue so far, and it's 300 students. And so we'll be doing social distancing. We've already bought a lot of masks and gowns and gloves and all of those things. So we're getting ready to open in 2 weeks to do the makeup hours that let students finish spring term. So that's how we are, planning to make students finish. The state has given us a lot of flexibility about giving withdrawal, an emergency withdrawal and an emergency incomplete. And so most of our students that are in this role, we give them an emergency incomplete, which gives them time to finish. And then if they do a withdrawal, the CARES money is going to pay their tuition so that they don't have to pay it again. And so that they would not be negatively impacted. So there are many things that are going on, both at the federal level and the state level. We're getting direction from the state level a little bit. But for the most part, the colleges are independent, and we do what we can to work together, but we're in such different situations on the online world, for example. We're much better prepared than most colleges. And others of them have gone back to doing face-to-face already. So how they're doing that, I'm not exactly sure. But does that answer your question?
It does, and I would just say, pass along my compliments and appreciation to you, your boards, as well as both school systems. I can only imagine, I can't even imagine what you guys are having to try to figure out. So thank you for what you're doing.
Yeah,
and also
I know you have bigger problems than what we have, but I will tell you that this has been the biggest challenge I've ever seen. And part of it's because you can't just serve more people by stuffing them into a class, right? And so what I'm worried about is, what does the fall look like? What does the spring look like when the people who are unemployed are coming in looking for job skills? And that is what I'm worried about. So we could fix that in 2010, and we did. We had a 25% increase in enrollment because of the recession, and we were able to absorb it. This next one is going to be bigger because the unemployment rate is greater, and so we're going to have to create more opportunities for people. And the online, the scalability of online is going to work for us for that. But for these other hands-on things, we're going to have to be a little more creative or take over some spaces that would have gone to regular face-to-face. But it makes a big impact.
Thank you.
Hey, additional questions or comments for Dr. Spalding?
I had a quick.
Yes, sir.
Carol, we just talked to Cabarrus County Schools, and their calendar changed, and you said your calendar was not changing. And since we have students that take advantage of the early college program, does their calendar change? Did it make it better or worse for lining up?
Worse.
It made it, well, yikes. Okay, well, that's not good, because that's, well, I don't remember exactly how we were bridging that gap before, but that, and I can't remember exactly how many students are in that program, but it's not an insignificant number.
It's 240 students.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, it's not an insignificant number. And, so what we're looking at is the impact on early college, which is 3 different solutions, because we have 3 of them. Now, in the case of Rowan Salisbury schools, they have control of their own calendar, which is one of the benefits of being a renewal. And so they can match us. And so that's not a problem. The flexibility for the online portion is that the early college students will start on our calendar for college credit. And so we're not getting off for the Republican convention. We don't start until after that. So it's not a disaster, but it is a big time workaround. Gotcha. And we're not completely sure how this is all going to work, because I don't think anybody knows how K through 12 is going to come back.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
But Dr. Spalding, I think your calendar, or the school calendar, K-12 calendar, is better for those students doing your college and career promise online classes.
Yes.
You have quite a number of students. Blake, I think you asked about the early college. For the students that are doing those college and career promise online classes, it is going to be much better. I'm not certain your start date August 17th?
Yes.
Yeah, so the start date will be better for those online students.
That's right.
Which is helpful. And you have quite a number of students who do online classes with you. Those are dual enrollment for the other commissioners, where students can earn community college credit and high school credit as juniors or seniors. And it is a phenomenal program that has blossomed, and a lot of high school juniors and seniors take your courses and do extremely well with your college level courses.
That's really true. That's really true.
Great program.
Yeah, thank you. We know, but we keep statistics per high school, and Cox Mill is the largest consumer of dual enrollment of anybody that I know of. And it's all to their advantage so that they can go, if they, we want people to start with us, right? To be a first choice. And so that first choice really means start here, right? And then transfer your credits when you want to go someplace else, or finish with us and then transfer as a junior. And so all of those possibilities are there. And I think it just took off by word of mouth. The strength of the program was really carried, and it didn't used to be supported very much by advisors, but now I think it's really preferred. So that these students are getting a real head start. Their parents are saving a lot of money, and the students are saving a lot of time going forward. So it's a great program, and Cabarrus is, I don't know anybody who's doing better than Cabarrus on this.
Good. Well, the only other comment I would make was I was disappointed in the slideshow that we didn't get a great picture of the mascot. Every year we get a terrific picture, so maybe next year.
Okay, yes, next year we'll bring out the mascot, absolutely.
That's probably because she had plans for him to be with us in person. And we trailed that. So. That's
right. Okay, so in the background, you have Jonathan Chamberlain, our Chief of Campus Environment, and Dave Cannon, who's new to you probably, who's our Chief Financial Officer. We could not, bring Beacon on for a TV special because he'd take up all the camera room. His nose is that big. So, but thank you for missing him. We miss him too.
Right. Any other questions or comments for Dr. Spalding? Thank you very much for that presentation. I think you did an excellent job of demonstrating how important it is to be flexible in the environment that we're in. I think you're doing an excellent job. It's my honor to serve on your board of trustees and get to hear about some of these things firsthand. I think one of the several big points that you made in your presentation in talking about the impact that the community college is having, not only on those continuing students getting their higher education, but as well as those high school students. Those students, for example, in the welding program that are acquiring very good paying jobs directly out of those programs. Those other students, as you mentioned, who are realizing college credits while they're in high school and saving time and money when they do go for their higher education. So the community college touches so many people, from those people that are currently unemployed that are going to be seeking retraining, the things that you talked about. So thank you for all of your efforts. And I think the key word for all of us in many of the discussions that we're having today is flexibility. There are so many unknowns as we go through the next few months, and certainly the period of time that our budget will cover, that we're all going to have to be continually reevaluating, taking second looks, figuring out what works. And so we certainly appreciate your leadership in doing that.
It's my honor. Thank you.
I think we've fallen a little behind on our schedule, but we are happy to have with us for the next presentation the Cabarrus Health Alliance for their budget request. We hear from the Health Alliance every year. We talk about the work that they do. We talk about public health. We talk about the what ifs a lot. The things that our public health professionals have to be prepared for. I don't think that when we had this conversation last year that we ever realized the very primary role that our public health authority has taken over the past several months, and the leadership that they have provided for the entire community through this pandemic that we're currently experiencing. So we are very proud and appreciative of the work that has occurred from the Cabarrus Health Alliance and certainly the leadership there. I see that we have Chairman Mack with us, And so I'm assuming you're going to lead that presentation. But feel free to pass that off as needed. Welcome.
Thank you very much, and I'd like to say good evening to the commissioners, and again, thank you for the opportunity to present our budget this year. And also want to just thank you for the relationship that we have and that we continue to have working with the commissioners, especially Mr. Morris, as far as with him being on our board with the expertise that he offers us as far as the assistance that he provides us. This evening, Sue Yates will be doing the presentation. She is our CFO, so she will take the chair from here and she will do the presentation with you.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I am Sue Yates with Cabarrus Health Alliance, and I'm going to review our fiscal year 21 budget with you. The next slide is a summary of our request, which includes our annual merit and fringe increases, a 1% increase in our 401k contribution, increases in school health nurses, along with preparedness. Last year, you generously provided funding for our clinical services. Dr. Suda came to you and presented a need in our county for our pregnant women and others in the community who do not have a funding source. At the beginning of our budget planning, we were hopeful that we could fund clinical services in the coming year. However, the pandemic hit in our community, and we believe with the increase in unemployment, there will be an increased need to serve those in our community with little or no money. So we are requesting that this funding does stay in our operational budget. I do believe that's part of the county budget as well. I just apologize for this particular slide not being updated with having the 200,000 still being in there. Next slide, please. So our school health request includes 2 school nurses, one for an elementary school that will be opening, as well as one for a high school that will be opening. Mary Frances Wall has had a part-time school nurse, and the school system has requested that we continue to increase our hours and our services there with the increased need from the students and the population in the preschool up there. There's also an increase in a part-time school nurse to full-time. That's the Kannapolis Middle School nurse becoming full-time because they're the 2 different buildings. Also, in the fall or late summer, we discussed with the county increasing our school nurses' hours to 8 hours a day along with their benefit coverage due to employee retention. So this coming year, we're requesting for the county to do 40% of that increase as part of our discussions earlier in the year. Next slide, please. So our preparedness coordinator has been split with Rowan County. They funded 40% of the position's time and funding, and we had the other 60. But this year we have really came to understand the need to have one preparedness coordinator. I cannot commend the job that she's been doing. She's been doing excellent work, but being pulled between 2 counties in a time like this has been very difficult to do, and we could definitely use the resources in Cabarrus County. So we are requesting that position increased funding. Next slide, please. So we know that this meeting is to discuss our next year's budget. However, we did want to go ahead and discuss and just make you aware of the anticipated expenses that we believe we will have. The school nurses are funded for 10 and a half months or 204 days, sorry. So in the summer, we will need some staff to help us along with our response. And this is what we are looking at. We're working to get these needs funded, but we were wanting to share this with the commissioners today. Are there any questions? I'm sure I went through all of that relatively quickly.
Any questions for Ms. Yates? Well, I think the same theme that we discussed in an earlier presentation certainly runs through this one as well, and that is flexibility. I think the Health Alliance has seen changes in their environment unlike any of us might have expected over the past several months, and they've done a wonderful job. So happy that we have had the school nurses, as you mentioned. The moment that school closed, they were on board helping in that emergency operations center, going out on testing. I mean, and I'm not qualified to to mention all the different areas that they have been involved in, but it has been a tremendous amount and of great value to our community, in addition to the wonderful work that they do in the schools. So hats off to all of them. Do any of you have questions you'd like to ask of the Health Alliance?
Mr. Chairman, this is Lynn. I do have one, and this will be for our county manager. Mike, these expenses for COVID, is that going to be covered under the CRL funds?
Yes, sir. Yeah, what they've got on that slide would be covered 100%.
Good. Thank you.
Okay, for the benefit of the public, that is the CARES Act funds that have come down to the county that we will use to cover COVID-19 expenses for the Health Alliance, for the county, as well as our municipalities. And we have been working very hard to make sure that everyone is fairly treated in that process, and all those needs are covered. So we're very, very fortunate in that regard. Any other questions, commissioners?
I don't have a question, but I just had a comment that I want to repeat what was said. The school nurses have done a phenomenal job. You have a lot of staff members at the Health Alliance who have moved from their regular positions, if you will, and covered all the responses. I'm very appreciative for the videos that are put out every day and the results to keep everybody informed on the impacts, the personal impacts of COVID-19. I think a lot of times we think if we don't know somebody personally that it's not really here, but that's putting the face on what's going on in the community. There's no way to explain all the efforts that everybody at the Cabarrus Health Alliance have put in, and the many extra hours that they have put in battling this pandemic for us locally. So thank you to everybody. Thank you to all the school nurses. They're greatly missed. I know they'd like to be in the schools and they can't be right now, obviously. But I know that they've all been working very hard. And this goes back again, I think I mentioned this before, to a number of years ago when I was approached by my school nurse who needed health insurance. And because they are 10-month employees, they weren't full-time. And we were able to work with y'all and be able to offer that to them if they so chose. And I do think it's helped with retention. I think we've worked on that with the school nurses. And the program is, we're very fortunate in Cabarrus County because not every county has the school nurse in every school. And I'm glad for the increase in time there at Mary Frances Wall Center that you've asked for. And I just think that's a great program. And if you have students in school, then they all know about it. If you don't have somebody in school, then because you don't have children in school, then you don't realize the huge impact that you guys have. And there's everything else that you do in addition to, but y'all have been very flexible to address this issue. And you have a new director, and I look forward to when we can have a face-to-face meeting and we will get to meet her and hear from her with all of her ideas and plans for the future and all the needs in Cabarrus County.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Coyle looks forward to meeting all of you. I would also like to point out the school nurses. A lot of the volunteers were not able to keep their positions at Cooperative Christian Ministry, Meals on Wheels, and things like that. So mainly school nurses went out and covered their shifts to ensure that those services in the county were able to continue. And I'm very proud of their work. And thank you, commissioners, so much for your support. Dr. Coyle would like to say a few words.
wanted to jump in there and say hi to everyone. And I am also looking very forward to meeting you all face to face, hopefully in the near future.
Great. Well, we appreciate the work that you've been doing. I mean, you landed in Cabarrus County, well, just right in the middle of everything. And so, you know, so I think about that sometimes and think about the welcome that you did not get. Normally, we would be hosting a reception and wanting to introduce you to folks throughout the community and welcome you. And of course, that process. And the only consolation that we can offer is the rules that you have advised us on are the ones that have prevented us from doing that.
Exactly.
Yeah, we appreciate wise guidance as well. But for any of you that are not familiar, and I have to mention Erin Shue and the excellent job that she did and continues to do during that interim period, and certainly welcoming Dr. Cole on board. We continue to have calls. We started out initially 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, with all of our municipal managers and mayors and folks from the Health Alliance, representatives from our hospital system, talking about the issues that we're dealing with regarding the COVID-19. We continue to have those calls twice weekly, every week. And so that has just been invaluable. And the leadership that the Health Alliance has provided in putting those together, keeping everybody informed and on the same page is something that does not happen in counties across North Carolina. So we're so proud of that we've been able to have that leadership from you and that communication. So welcome and thank you. And we look forward to doing that face to face. It's been my privilege to have done that prior to, but the rest of the board has not had that opportunity. So we look forward to doing that. Are there any other questions or comments for Dr. Cole or for the Health Alliance before we move on? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
According to our agenda, we had scheduled a break from 6 to 6:30, and it's now 6:32 according to my clock. So we can take a short break before we go in general board discussion. Typically, this half hour would be if we were meeting together, that we typically would have something to eat. But what is the pleasure of the board? Would you like to take 5 or 10 minutes and then come back, or would you like to proceed on? Feel free to speak up.
Mr. Chairman, I'm good to keep going because I don't think we got too much. It's been rather informative and pretty much self-explanatory between that and the book, and I'm good to keep going.
Okay. Well, not hearing anybody else speaking up, if anybody needs to take a quick break, they can just turn their camera off and do so and continue to listen. But we now will go into our period of general board discussion. I think this would be the period of time that we can have discussion about any of the presentations we've heard today or ask questions about those or anything coming up. So I'll turn it over to the county manager right now to see if he has anything that he wants to add into what we may have already heard as we go forward.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman Morris. Again, it's exciting to hear the presentations from our partners, but it's also exciting to hear that the communication and the collaboration is extended throughout, and that definitely trickles down from our commissioners who have pushed that from the day one, and it continues to push down through our staff and then to our partners as well. I think hopefully you enjoyed or found it very informative. to have our department heads that were actually requesting new employees to actually come and speak and talk to you about them. And I think Jimmy and Van and Emery and Karen all did an excellent job, not only talking about the requested employees, but also just the operational issues within their departments, their needs, and then finally those needs for those additional employees. And then of course, Rodney has put together a great program for everybody involved, both the board and those watching virtually to more understand, or have the ability to more understand now why the budget has been constructed the way it is, the vast needs that the county needs to meet, and a lot of it is because of our growth, and all partners have that same impact of the growth that we need to help them with. So it's becoming a challenge, and it's even more of a challenge now with the pandemic and the economy downturn recently. So it's more of a challenge for everybody there. So with that, I think, Rodney, have you got specific questions, or board, commissioners, do you have something that you heard or saw in any of the presentations that that you need more information on, or anything that you didn't hear from those particular departments, or that you've seen so far in the budget that you may have?
I haven't had a lot of time to review all of this, but have we heard anything back on the Mount Pleasant Library and the property there, and what's going on there?
The property, well, are you talking about the old middle school?
I'm sorry. I've lost you.
I'm here. Yeah, I saw.
There's anything else though?
Yeah, there's money that you have money budgeted there is money in the budget for the design, and then ultimately the next year for the West Side Library and Senior Center combination. There is, I don't have the exact dates, Rodney, you may need to help me on this, but there is additional money for library expansions in two years out, I believe. And there is no branch in particular that's been identified for that, because Mount Pleasant and Harrisburg and potentially Midland will need those. They're all, especially Mount Pleasant and Harrisburg, are already overcrowded. They need more space for programming. They need more space for books. So there is some money in there in future years. And Rodney, you want to add to that?
Yeah, that's accurate. The page 77 has a library replacement expansion. Because of the level of unknowns around Mount Pleasant, sort of where the site would be, what the terms might look like, we left that broad for now. And we know that there are significant needs also in Harrisburg and Midland. And so that $10 million, the hope would be that can do one facility or more than one facility, depending on the situation at the time.
Okay, thank you.
And then while I've got the mic, did a slide appear that says Commissioner Poole question on your end?
Yes.
Yes.
I wanted to walk through this real quick to get at sort of the question around the courthouse funding. And it's difficult because it shows up in a number of places in the budget. So there's not one place you can go to see how that funding breaks down. And so I created this table real quick to sort of show you where it shows up in the budget document. So the contribution to other funds, you'll find that amount on page 47, and it will be about $53 million. And the courthouse funding for FY21 that I referred to earlier is reflected in that amount. So you won't see it in the budget document broken out separately, but again, I've done that here. So within that amount, you've got a number of component parts. So the $36 million is the contribution from the general fund to the community investment fund. That's going to be an annual contribution. And that is our commitment from the general fund to pay for debt service and future capital projects. The next line is a one-time payment, which is $3 million that is going from the unallocated courthouse money. And so again, we're creating the CIF this year, and what it needed to get started was seed money, basically. And so we're using that $3 million from the courthouse to start that fund. The education capital outlay that you're typically used to seeing, that's about $1.2 million for the 3 schools, is reflected there. And then we have what are contributions to capital funds that are reflected in that line item. So you have deferred maintenance, which is all of our general maintenance for county facilities, is $2.1 million. And then again, the courthouse unallocated shows up $722,000. If you add the $3 million and the $722,000, that gets to the $3.7 million that I referred to earlier. The remaining balance, the $500,000, is located in the sheriff's office and then our health insurance fund. That's where that money goes. And so that totals the $4.2 million of courthouse money for FY21 and how it's being allocated. So I know that's a lot of information, but I wanted to try to walk through that real quick and at least give you a sense of where that money shows up in the FY21 budget.
So just to clarify, which I think I understand, I mean, I see what you're doing. That would mean that the position is the $3,722,866. Is that the amount of those positions? The 22 deputies, 3 sergeants that are not going to be hired for 2 more years or 2.5 more years? Is that what
Correct.
that comes
Correct.
from?
Yep.
Okay, thank you very much. That's very helpful.
And then the additional, in addition, so the 4.2 million, 2.2 million of that is personnel. The remaining $2 million is operating expenses. So increased utilities, increased security equipment, all of those expenses also go into that facility. So it's a combination of personnel plus operating.
So can you give me those numbers again? I'm sorry. Personnel is how much?
Personnel is 2.2 million, and then the operating is 2 million.
Thank you.
And then I'd be remiss if I didn't mention it because it's a big number and I think I skipped over it. The 3.9 million number that shows under capital projects unallocated. You'll remember last night when we walked through the scenarios around the tax rate, that in FY21, we could balance the budget with a slight reduction in the tax rate. The issues arise in future years. And so this 3.9 million is a reflection of that. And so the purpose of that money would be for additional one-time capital investments in FY21 so that it's there when we need it in FY22.
Thank you for that explanation. Are there additional questions that have arisen during the presentations tonight that anyone would like clarification on? Okay, well, I think we've done a good job of asking questions as we've gone along and gotten a great deal of information. Of course, we have our book that we're working from tonight. We also have a book that was presented to us today for our meeting on Thursday at 4 o'clock, and the presentations we'll receive then. I think all of you hopefully got your both a printed copy and an electronic copy of the entire budget today, which is a lot of material to go through. So we have been well prepared, I think. And so are there any other topics that anybody would like to discuss before we recess the meeting until our Thursday workshop?
I have one more question for the county manager. You mentioned earlier about the fire districts. So how do you want us to, because I haven't had time to look at that yet. So you want us to read that before Thursday and let you know tomorrow? Or what time do you need us to let you know if there's someone that we would like to have a presentation, or if we want Steve to do the presentation? How do you want us to handle that if we have questions for them?
Yeah, if you could take the opportunity tonight or tomorrow and read all of their explanations for the 2021 budget as to the funds they need. If there's some questions in there, please give me a call, and we can, whether it's our fire marshal or the fire chief from that particular department, we can have them ready to have a virtual presentation for you.
Mr. Chairman, I don't have any questions or anything. I would like to just remind the viewing audience that we do have a public hearing on this budget scheduled for our general meeting later on in the month. And so if people that are watching this want to come speak for, against, whatever, that there is that opportunity for them to do that at our general meeting. I don't have the date in front of me, but maybe someone has that date. June the 15th. And I'm assuming that will be a virtual meeting as well, but there will be accommodations made for anyone that wants to speak on the budget during the public hearing.
That is correct. We'll have several methods available for folks. They will be able to appear in person and appear as part of the video in the council chambers. They will also be able to email comments in. They will be able to call in and participate live in the meeting as well. So there are several options available. And then, of course, we do have the 24-hour period following the meeting that they are also allowed to add additional comments if they so desire. So there will be a number of opportunities. I think all of that information would appear on our webpage. Certainly anyone could call the county offices to get that information also. So we want to make sure that everybody has the opportunity that they desire to provide their input. Okay, any other questions or comments before we adjourn to Thursday?
Yeah, I guess just for the commissioners, again, if you get home or if you start looking at more of the budget and you have questions, don't wait till Thursday. Feel free to give us a call first thing in the morning or anytime tomorrow or anytime Thursday, and then that way we can have those answers ready for you, or with a slide prepared as well if we need to. And again, Commissioner Pools, same thing with the fire department budgets. If there are any questions, we can ask those questions to the particular fire department and get those answers for you, or we can actually have them make a presentation as well.
Okay, well, if there's nothing else at this time, I would entertain a motion.
I'm sorry, Steve, to interrupt you. Since we're at the end of the meeting, just make a comment about school going on. Students will finish up this week, and graduation is next Friday and Saturday at Charlotte Motor Speedway. And it should be an interesting couple days. And if you're not aware, commissioners, on how they're handling it this year, kudos to Charlotte Motor Speedway. They'll be using the big screen TV like a drive-in movie theater and doing presentations. And then the students will drive over the start-finish line, and their principal will give them their diploma. A lot of work has gone into that planning, and the Department of Public Instruction superintendent out of Raleigh, he's got people coming down to take pictures. So should be kind of interesting, unique event, but at least kudos to Cabarrus County Schools for coming up with a way of handling graduation in these uncertain times. But and congratulations to all the classroom teachers who will make it through trial by fire. The community college was, as she said, better set up to do this virtual learning. high schools and elementary schools, kudos to those parents because they've been doing a lot of teaching at home, especially if they have elementary and middle school students to try to keep working through the curriculum. So I'm not a classroom teacher, but I have great regard for all of the teachers that have continued to work so hard during this time. And congratulations to all the graduates. Commissioners, also, you're on Facebook. There's a Facebook page for seniors, and I think it's over 1,000 seniors in Cabarrus County were adopted. And I don't know if you guys have seen that, but you can find it on Facebook. And so 2 different families would adopt these seniors that were posted and provide them with gifts. It could be, I did one and he's going to UNCC. So I got him a t-shirt and a thermos and a gift card so that they could feel something special, which is a positive that came out. And that was community-based, started over, I think, with some people over in Harrisburg that they heard about it and set up this Facebook page for seniors in Cabarrus County. And like I said, about over 1,000 of them were adopted over the last couple months. So as strange as things have been, there have been a lot of outreach from a lot of people in the community to support the graduates. And thank you to all of those people who have tried their best to make this odd situation memorable for all those graduates. So just wanted to mention that so that everybody can be prepared. There'll be some traffic out there around the Speedway that people won't be used to next Friday and next Saturday. So if you think about 1 car per senior, and some of our Cox Mill, I don't know, they have 300 or 400 seniors. So that day will be quite busy out there around the Speedway. So just wanted to mention that so that the people listening to our broadcast will be aware of all the efforts that have gone into to try to make some of this time special for our seniors.
Great, thank you. Any other comments before we recess? Okay, hearing none, I would entertain a motion that we recess this budget workshop meeting to reconvene at 4 p.m. on Thursday, June 4th.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say no. And we are now in recess, and we will see everybody on Thursday at 4 o'clock. Thank you.